Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Play Stupid Games, Win Stupid Prizes. So, just a quick who am I? My current role is community coordinator at Hack the Box. I pretty much oversee the meetups program, coordinate sponsorships and B2C events, and also help with moderation of the Hack the Box Discord. My previous experience, I started my journey in InfoSec kind of in the IT world. So I started as a junior IT administrator kind of consultant, and I basically provided consultancy service within the private public sector. Hobbies, I have many hobbies, but one of my favorites is definitely music. I actively enjoy listening to many different genres and also play guitar as well, both acoustic and electric. I enjoy CTFs. I'm actually currently the team captain emeritus of CXP. I love doing cybersecurity research, especially research that focuses on malware analysis, Windows networking internals, and blue team and threat hunting. So today's agenda is relatively simple, but we're just going to be going through it one step at a time. So first things first, we're going to go through the current landscape. What does our current landscape look like? Talk about the security team versus software developers. Whose responsibility is it to keep the code base secure? Talk about secure code. What is secure coding, going through a basic secure coding checklist, shifting left. Why is security always kind of treated as an afterthought? And, just kind of the overall benefits of thinking about security while developing applications. And near the end, we'll, extend an olive branch to all of our developers out there watching this talk. Kind of how can we in security work with developers to produce code without sacrificing, the speed and efficiency to push new products. So that being said, we're going to go and start with our current landscape. So, and within our current landscape, there's two primary, there's primary roles between each landscape. There's the security landscape, and there's also the developer landscape. Both are completely separate and focus on different roles. The security landscape really focuses on detecting, responding and remediating against active attacks, right? They focus on developing security policy, set procedures and guidelines. They focus on auditing and security compliance management. And they also focus on gathering threat intelligence and keeping an eye on the overall threat landscape. Whereas on the developer side, they're more focused on releasing functional, good quality code in order to meet organizational and business goals, focus on adhering to strict, fast-paced release schedules and meeting project deadlines, focus on continually developing and releasing new features into the ecosystem for competition purposes, and they're also focused on delivering scalable and high availability applications to consumers. Clash of the Titans. So normally this title would throw a lot of people off, but I believe it's very true in this case, right? Both the security team and the development team have different purposes, and sometimes those purposes will clash, especially when you're trying to push a secure application. So welcome to the inherent clash. The dichotomy in mindset and responsibilities. As mentioned before, both teams have different priorities when it comes to delivering applications, especially when given a timeline. The development team are expected to deliver functional, fully featured code, usually within near impossible deadlines, to meet company and client expectations and requirements. Security teams, on the other hand, face the external-internal pressure to safeguard company and client data, from the ever-growing and adapting number of potential threats. These threats are everywhere currently on the landscape, and they have to keep an eye on any emerging threats as well as any huge threats that are already out there. So how do these mindsets clash, right? Well, to the development team, right, they can see the security team as sort of an extra obstacle to overcome, right? Especially when trying to meet deadlines. As I mentioned before, the deadlines within the development world are very, very quick because turnaround, especially for products, is extremely quick. The reason being is they're always actively trying to work on making sure that they can push out the product they would like to push out, but also make sure that they stay competitive within the market, right? So basically, the development team can see the security team as trying to overcomplicate the development cycle, by introducing tools that they otherwise wouldn't use, without ensuring proper guidance to how to use these tools and how to code securely. That's kind of the general mindset that the development team will take, right? Whereas on the other hand, the security team, kind of sees the development team as acting in opposition of securing code, right? They often, kind of resent the extra unplanned work, when responding to vulnerabilities caused by, the cutting of corners, during the development process, especially when trying to meet very tight deadlines. That being said, at the end of the day, who holds the most responsibility for securing code bases? Ideally, both parties are equally responsible for making sure that any code released into production, meets the overall secure standards of the company, as well as kind of the needs of the clients and its consumers. However, reality is very cruel, especially in today's world. And usually after the event of a security breach, the security team is the first to be held responsible for any damages, typically because they're seen as the last line of defense, especially when it comes to securely auditing code before release. Secure code. So everyone knows secure code, right? But do you really know what comprises of writing secure code? So, secure coding. What is secure code? Well, strictly, secure code is written in a high-level language that follows strict coding principles and conventions, usually written with the mindset of preventing common security vulnerabilities, including but not limited to XSS, SQLI, buffer overflow, etc. They're written in a secure environment, on reliable and secure infrastructure. They're thoroughly tested through and through during development and the release cycles. That being said, why is it important? Why do we care about it? The reason secure coding is important is because it helps to lower the inherent risk of data breaches and security incidents. As everyone is well aware, security breaches and data incidents, especially now, are commonplace. The whole thought process, we don't have anything important, we're not going to be hacked, isn't quite applicable anymore, especially in today's landscape. You have money, you are definitely going to be a target at one point or another. That being said, secure coding also minimizes the time and the money spent retroactively going back, fixing code introduced into the environment after a security breach. It's easier to fix code beforehand than it is to go back and fix it retroactively. And overall, it costs less money to do so. And it also helps to maintain customer trust and confidence in the company and its products. At the end of the day, the customers are everything, right? So why wouldn't we give them the confidence that we can secure our code? So that being said, we'll kind of move on to best practices, right? A very simple approach to follow is the KISS approach, right? I'm sure everyone has heard of it at one point in their life. Keep it simple, stupid. Try not to overcomplicate process and procedures, because usually that's what kicks secure coding in the back, right? When the security team tries to overcomplicate the processes and procedures in order to produce secure code, that's usually when developer kickback begins to ensue. Also, no need to reinvent the wheel here, people. Kind of stick with proven secure coding guidelines and standards. A few good examples of which are the OWASP Top 10, the MITRE CWE, or Basic Common Weakness Enumeration, and also CERT coding standards, which is run by US CERT, the government industry team. So to pretty much help everyone out here, we're just going to kind of go over a basic secure coding checklist, right? This isn't everything. This is just kind of a basic checklist to kind of run through, especially in your mind when you're working on code, especially when you're developing applications, right? So let's go ahead and begin with an easy one: code minification and obfuscation, right? At the end of the day, I know you want to make your code look as nice as possible. I'm especially bad about making my code look extremely nice. However, in terms of being secure, while making sure that your coding looks nice, you also kind of want to deter, potential attackers in case they get a hold of your source code, right? A good way of doing that is basically obfuscating the code, or pretty much making it unreadable or extremely difficult to read. You can also reduce readability by also removing white spaces and line breaks. This is also known as minification. Next thing on the list, avoiding shortcuts. As we all know, every dev in their lifetime has made some shortcuts when trying to push code out there, especially when you have a short time schedule and you have to make sure that everything gets done properly and on time. So some common pitfalls in this are: avoid hard coding credentials and security tokens within code. If adversaries were to get a hold of this, it's extremely bad. You pretty much given them the keys to the kingdom, essentially. Everyone's favorite: avoid using random code snippets found on the internet. This includes Stack Overflow, GitHub, etc. When you're writing secure code, you want to know everything that your code is doing. Using random code snippets off the internet, you run into issues with making sure that it's good quality code and that there's no security flaws in there that you're not aware of. Last thing is to remove any confidential information from your comments. I know we all love to use comments. Just make sure you don't have anything too overly important in there, and treat pretty much all comments as being public anyways. Next thing, automated scanning and code reviews, right? When coding, you kind of want to have a strict code review process that keeps up with the development cycle. So that way, as you're going through the development cycle, you are continually reviewing your code, making sure that it's secure, making sure there's no obvious bugs, and just kind of continuing along that cycle that way. It's important to kind of implement automated static and dynamic analysis tools to kind of help you catch potential vulnerabilities and to solve them early. Next thing, avoid components with known vulnerabilities. When using libraries and open source code components on the internet, pay attention to the possible vulnerabilities that these can have within them, right? Be aware of what code you put in before you put it in to your code. That being said, if you are going to use open source components and libraries, make sure to kind of monitor them over the development cycle. And at the end, remove any obsolete or any deprecated components. The last thing, and in my opinion, one of the most important, is to make sure you have proper auditing and logging. Make sure to implement sufficient logging and monitoring within your application. This is extremely important, especially when you're looking for bugs. When you're trying to make sure that things are working properly, you need logging. You need some way to catch those errors if and when they do happen. So, shifting left. Now, it's kind of a broad phrase, but I'll give me a second and I'll perfectly explain what I mean by this. So, shifting left, what does it mean? The term shifting left simply refers to the idea that testing software for bugs and vulnerabilities should be kind of addressed earlier in the software development cycle. This pretty much assures that security within an application isn't treated as an afterthought and is given its own special attention as the application is being developed and not after it's been developed. A good example of the software development lifecycle is here. Phase 1, requirement analysis, kind of getting a good bearings of the requirements you need for your application. Phase 2, feasibility study. This is the study on how feasible it is to release your product and the requirements that you would like to release with it. Next is architectural design, basically designing your application, what you would like to do, what are some things that you would like for it to actually address. The next thing on the software development cycle is phase 4, which is software development. This is the actual development portion. This is where you're writing code, you're actively developing everything that needs to be, you're working with the clients and also within your company to make sure that you're meeting not only deadlines, but ensuring that you're working within the bounds that you're supposed to. The next phase is testing. And now this is the phase that definitely needs to be pushed earlier, right? Because as you can see, testing is treated at the end, right? Which means it's the last line of defense before you deploy your application. That being said, overall, it really should be kind of moved back, to kind of increase the security as you go along instead of waiting until the last minute to make sure that your application is secure. So why is this important? Well, obviously, reducing stress, following release is a big factor. You want to reduce the stress of your team as they are releasing and deploying the application. This makes sure that, any security flaws, bugs are worked out kind of early in the development cycle, and you don't have to deal with last minute issues. It also increases efficiency in the software development process. It's much more efficient to write better code starting out than it is to go back and retroactively fix bad or buggy code. Last, it improves, product quality, because as you are writing code, if you are actively looking for security flaws and bugs within your code, you will detect more of them and you will solve them earlier in the development cycle when there are less variables, less things to worry about. So it's that time to talk. So I know I've kind of said a lot so far, especially, really pushing the security side of coding, right? But let me kind of also extend an olive branch to the developers. So here's what I believe is the core crux of the issue, right? Here's the olive branch. Coding securely while trying to release software while working under an actively diminishing timeline is extremely difficult to achieve. And under some circumstances, I will agree that prioritizing functional code can be just as important, if not more so, than securing said code, right? And as my time in IT, walking in consulting, I've seen many different environments, and I've had to also walk into already existing environments and begin to work my magic, so to speak. Development is the same way, right? A lot of developers walk into an already existing code base that's gigantic, written by dozens, if not, hundreds of people over countless years. Securing what's already been written, nearly impossible by an individual and by the team. That being said, that isn't their only goal here, right? Because consumers are constantly seeking new products, with a more expansive set of features, right? As a developer, you're also there to make sure that your product stays competitive in the market. And the market is constantly expanding. So I understand that it's also a full-time effort to simply produce new features and keep your product competitive. So let me offer a proposed solution, right? Because at the end of the day, while we can't fix some of those issues, we can offer kind of a solution about what we can do to solve some of these issues. First, Let's go ahead and build, around a culture of security, right? Like I said beforehand, security is often thought of as a last-ditch attempt to make sure your product is secure and not so much really important until the very, very end. I believe that we should educate our developers, our IT, our organizational management, and any internal, external stakeholders about the importance of security and kind of the cost benefits to implement secure coding practices and following basic security principles. Also begin to build a secure software development lifecycle. As mentioned before, there is the basic software development lifecycle, but implementing a secure software development cycle will help your products become more secure over time as you are developing. You need to kind of create a plan, for securely building and maintaining applications from, the very beginning, such as the initial requirement gathering to, adding new features and functionality, and even through the release. The next one is very important. Make sure to properly staff security teams. They're very pivotal in training and guiding your development team to creating safe and secure products. However, they cannot do that if they do not have the appropriate number of staff to achieve that goal, especially because your development team can be in the hundreds, if not thousands of developers, depending on where you work and where you are. So try not to skip out on the people who are put within the security team. Also, just kind of to go back to one of the other slides, shift left. Try to push the process of securing applications earlier in the development process instead of at the end. Remember, security should not be an afterthought. It should be within the development process of creating an application. The next proposed solution, provide proper training and foster collaboration, right? Just providing security awareness and just general security and coding standards training to all the developers will help you produce more secure code at a much faster path, at a much faster pace than otherwise just letting them go on based on their initial knowledge of coding. And, kind of encourage active collaboration, right? Every department is kind of treated as its own little bubble, whereas they really should be joined together to, collaborate, talk, and to work through problems. Because at the end of the day, they're both responsible for making sure that their code is secure. So kind of encourage and really push that they collaborate, that the security team and the development team collaborate between each other. Just have your security team and development team work closely together, right? Through all the stages of development, even as far as the planning stages. Having your security team within the beginning of creating your product will actually help guide your product to being more secure. The next concept here is kind of implementing the concept of security champions, right? These are developers who understand application security, right? Kind of the best practices and are really able to kind of advise their colleagues. This will help make sure that products are secure because you have somebody within the development cycle who not only understands the application security, but also how to really speak the lingo of the development team and gain their trust. Ideally, security champions should be individuals who really kind of show that interest in security, right? Deep down, that would love to make their code secure and really strive for that. Ideally, they should be trained by the security team to make sure that they understand what are the requirements that the security team has for them, as well as their code, in order to share it with the rest of their team. So just as a continuity from the next slide, the next proposed solution is using automated tools, right? This includes implementing SaaS tools into common development tools such as IDEs, continuous integration servers, and bug tracking systems, just in order to keep the process streamlined, efficient, and secure from the initial development to delivery of the product. Using this automation kind of helps reduce the human workload and kind of the error rate of people versus manually going in, auditing a large code base, and trying to manually pull out all the errors within that code. Right. This especially saves time and effort when it comes to quality assurance before releasing the code out there. So I mentioned SaaS tools, but I never really described what they are. So SaaS basically stands for Static Application Security Testing. These tools basically analyze source code or even compiled versions of code, or sometimes both, right? It helps to detect vulnerabilities during software development. Good example of this is it basically will highlight problematic code, will give you kind of the file name where it found that problematic code, its location, its line number, any affected code blocks that may be within the problematic section of code, right? And the cool thing about SaaS tools is a lot of them can be implemented directly into IDEs, as well as the continuous integration, continuous development platforms, which greatly brings comfortability to the developers that they can actually implement these tools into tools that they are already comfortable with. That's important. Custom tools are wonderful. However, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that these are common tools that developers can actively, easily jump into and use, because they're the ones who, at the end of the day, is going to try to secure their code to the best of their ability within the time frame. So just kind of some common examples of SaaS tools. If you've heard of some of these, you may or may not have, include Clockwork, Veracode, Sentinel, Sneak, and SonarQube. So thank you very much, everyone. And this is the end of my talk. If you have any questions, after this, I will be hopping into the Discord chat, and you can send me your questions there. All right, thank you very much. All right, bye.